Welcome back to Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by the Private Bank. We are at the Heineken Pub 97. We'll be here each and every Wednesday, 6 o'clock, the start time for the next several shows. Come on out to the Heineken Pub 97. You can be part of the studio audience throughout the course of the year. Frank Lopez, Paul Tenorio, me, Fred Hubner. The guy in the end, the guy that helped put this team together as the general manager, Nelson Rodriguez, joins us. You had a lot of plans, a lot of ideas in the offseason, Nelson. How did you feel after the first game?
Well, the biggest disappointment of the first game for me is just the real unfortunate injury to John Goossens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, here's a guy who worked so hard in the offseason, really wanted this opportunity, particularly to play in the middle of the field. I think for those who watched the game, as he grew into the game, our team got much better. And it's almost a sin that he suffered such a devastating injury on the virtually the last play of the game, and in an all-out effort to preserve the result for us. So, you know, we're confident that he'll make his way back, but that's the lasting impression of the game. Beyond that, I honestly thought the result was fair. I thought Columbus could have had more than one in the first half. We probably could have had more than one in the second half, and on balance, I think the game was pretty even.
I'm going to follow up on the Goossens injury because from multiple angles this affects the team. Midfield depth, as well as the fact that, as unfortunate as it is, it also opens up an international spot on this team. So if you are looking to add pieces that could open up more possibilities, does this create a need to go out and find a midfielder right away? And secondly, I know you've had a couple right back trialists in. How have they looked, and do you feel you're close to adding some depth on the back line?
Well, first, on the international slots, we're aware of our situation, but the injury is bad all the way around, and we would solve the international slot issue if we needed to in a few different ways that we have figured and planned. In terms of making an immediate change, no, we don't feel that need. You know, this confers an opportunity to guys like Drew Connor and Brandt Bronico to try to step in and assume that role that John was going to have, or wide for Daniel Johnson maybe to sneak some times on the flank, and Daniel can also play inside a bit. So we're going to take a deep breath. We're not going to look to make a move in response to this injury at all. That said, we have been looking, and we have reserved salary cap space and MLS resources to bring in another player. And we have been searching for what we call another impact player, someone who can help us more on the attacking side of the ball, preferably a more experienced player still. But we have some options, and we'll keep looking. With regard to right back, which I think was the third part of your question, Ryan Taylor is still in with us this week. We thought it was fair for him to get acclimated, time change, different pace of game, different style of game here, and we'll see how he does before we either continue the search or select him or look for another alternative.
Nelson, can you give us a little bit update where Polster is at the moment? That's the first question, and I know if it takes a little bit time for the next segment, and I just want you to touch a little bit upon the moves that you've been able to make with Dax and Juninho, because these are both two players that I know that a lot of teams were after. And even when I was in Columbus with Juninho, I went the day before with Dan Kelly, and I had an opportunity to watch Columbus train. And the first thing that Greg was telling me, man, I was trying to get the guys Juninho. I don't know how they were able to pull that one by me, but I tried to get him here. So can you touch a little bit upon that, how those things came together?
With Matt is still probably about 3 weeks away, and we will be a little more cautious. This is the second time he's suffered the same injury in a short span of time. We want to work surrounding muscle groups for him, strengthen his core so that this doesn't become chronic in any way. But his progress is good. His progress has been surprisingly linear, meaning he is getting better every day without any kind of relapse or falter. And obviously that's another reason why we feel we can withstand this injury to John. Dax and Juninho, those acquisitions were very different. Dax was premeditated. This was a caveman-like hunt over a long time to try to get him, and his character and his play was something in particular that we wanted. Interestingly, the final deal that we were able to successfully acquire his services was almost exactly what we had projected. We had, through the combination of the picks that we sold and the money that we gave, was almost exact. Juninho was very different. I have to be candid. We had no idea that he would be available. We had no idea that he was coming back to the league. But once we knew that, we struck, and it's a lesson that we learned last year. When there's a deal to be made, sometimes you got to make it. And we were very aggressive with Minnesota. I think Minnesota did very well for themselves because by virtue of their trade with us, they de facto retained the first spot and then were able to flip that again for a sizable sum of a return. So I think that worked well. And I know that initially people were, how can these two guys play together, or aren't they the same? They're just very good players, and they complement each other very well. They work well within the system that Pano wants to play. I think the fans will be pleased when they get to see him in a regular season match together.
When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the midfield, also the keeper, Bava, who made some big saves. We talked about that, and also leadership on this team as they get ready for the home opener coming up on Saturday. Get on out there. 1 o'clock start at Toyota Park as Real Salt Lake comes to town. We are here each and every Wednesday right here, Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by the Private Bank. Welcome back to Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by the Private Bank. We're here talking with Chicago Fire General Manager Nelson Rodriguez. A 1-1 draw in the opener, as Frank read at the start of the show. Road points are always important, and great to get one in the opening game.
Yeah, again, I thought it was a fair result. For me, I tried to look for different things over the course of the game, and one of the things that I came away impressed by was the collective work of the group, particularly in the last 10 minutes. You know, as I scanned the field, I saw a lot of guys communicating with each other, pointing to the clock, clearly a signal saying what happened last year is not happening this year. And I thought for the last 10 minutes we were the better side, and I felt very secure, where last year I have to admit there were many times where I wasn't so sure.
Well, I also saw something on the game. Now, Frank, I'm not sure if you saw it. I'm sure you did. But there was a time where Dax was looking for the ball, and one of the defenders kicked it long. And Dax turned around and said, "I'm here." And that was showing me immediately the leadership he's taken over as one of the midfielders.
No question. And, you know, from talking to some of the guys, I know Dax had a lot to say in that huddle right before the game, but he seemed to capture the spirit and the mood of the guys precisely. These are the things that we thought we were acquiring when we made the move, and already through the limited time he was with us in preseason and through the first week of the regular season, he's demonstrating all of that.
You know, I tend to look at, and we've talked about this before, the building process in Major League Soccer is usually being kind of a 3-year journey. You use the first year to bring some pieces in and identify a core and maybe the core pieces you're missing, go out and supplement that, and then by the 3rd year, you're kind of fine-tuning. It looks like that's the track you guys are on. The 2nd year, you're adding guys like Juninho and Dax and Nikolic and Bava. The 1st year, Kapelhoff, DeLu, players like that coming in that were already there. Brandon Vincent, Jonathan Campbell. We've talked about that 3rd spot that you have, or that next spot you have that you're identifying. What to you is the next piece that fixes this? Are you looking for a number 10 type player? Are you looking for a winger? Is it just that it's got to be the right attacking piece?
Yeah, I think we have options. So look, the team is still not as complete as we would like. You know, we would love to reinforce the back line a little bit. We're light in numbers and can use some cover in some different spots in the back line. Having said that, we've had this conversation as a staff. If we could bring in what we thought was an impact player, and for me, those are always on the offensive side of the ball, no disrespect intended or discounting the importance of good center backs, but for me, that's on the offensive side of the ball. Or do we look to spread that and maybe look to add 2 very good players in various spots where we think we could use some more cover or an improvement in our starting 11? And I think if we can get that impact player, that would be our preference. Again, right now, and I think we've demonstrated, we will be deliberate. We want to, as best as we can, make sure that when we bring a player in, it's the right person first, someone who fits in with our culture, and is going to uphold our values, and second is a player that we think gives us the best chance to win.
Nelson, I just wanted to ask you about the Tulsa partnership a little bit and how important that is, especially for some of the younger players, now to get some meaningful games. And then the players that you guys do loan there, are they seasonal loans, or you can bring them back at different points in the season?
We're excited to be with Tulsa. I want to recognize that I thought St. Louis FC did a really good job for us, but I think we both just outgrew the partnership. And I think they have new designs and new goals, and we respect that. And we needed more certainty. And so Colin Fernandez will go on a season-long loan to Tulsa. Now, with all of our loans, we always have the ability to recall, but the plan for Colin is go there, get your games, prove yourself, get your minutes. If he's crushing it and we have a need, we can bring him back. But David Vaudrell has been instrumental in that affiliation. He has regular dialogue with Pano on a weekly basis, or with Matt Pearson, our head of scouting. And so there's an understanding as to what some of their needs are, what some of our desires are. But what we've told our players, anyone who goes down there, they're not guaranteed anything. They still have to earn it at Tulsa, because that's the mark of a pro.
You look at some of the other young players. You mentioned Daniel Johnson and Georgi Mihalovic and the guys like this. You see them slowly but surely as the season goes on, possibly fitting in somewhere?
I don't know if it's slowly or surely. I think what we always say is, if you're good enough and you've earned it, you'll be on the field. And I think that Pano has proven that. You know, he's proven he will change from game to game. He's proven he will play guys if he feels that they give us the best chance. And that's a mentality that we're going to constantly reinforce. Nothing is given to you. You should expect nothing. You have to earn it. And when you've earned it, it's not guaranteed for the following week. You've got to repeat that process.
How much do the plans that you're making at this point, are they impacted by results? You know, I know you've talked before about maybe not hesitant, not the right word, but there is a process when you bring someone in the summer for them to adjust to the league and all of that. Does that change if you look like you're one piece away from getting that bump into the playoffs?
The first thing I'd say is I learned something from listening to Bill Polian, who constructed the great Colts teams. You're never one player away. And to think you're one player away is probably a fool's mentality. So I hope not to fall into that trap. It's a constant process of improvement from within the group, from within the league, and then from outside the league. I think we've accelerated our progress. Look, we wanted to improve the middle of our park from last year to this year. At the start of that process, that I think we get 2 players of the ilk of Dax and Juninho, boy, that would have been a dream scenario, and we managed to. So I think we're a little bit ahead of where I anticipated. We have to give this team time to gel, to come together, to learn each other, to forge an identity for themselves. But again, what I can share with everybody is the locker room last year was a good locker room filled with a lot of good guys. That holds, but there's a different sense of accountability and trust.
Nelson, we appreciate you jumping on in. Let's go on out and get 3 points on Saturday. That'd be a perfect home opener.
From your lips to God's ears, and we look forward to seeing the fans out at Toyota Park.
Chicago Fire General Manager Nelson Rodriguez. We come back, we'll talk more about the Chicago Fire. And don't forget, you can get on out there, chicago-fire.com, a 1 o'clock kick against RSL at Toyota Park. You're watching Chicago Fire Weekly, presented by the Private Bank.